Which guys being drafted early, or just being drafted, are the most likely to bust in 2021? Dave, let's start with your quarterback bust candidate. Who do you think may disappoint fantasy managers this season?
Oh, this is a tough one, and there are quite a few that I can talk about, but I am going to start off with Tua Tagovailoa, and I know that's going to be a pretty unpopular opinion. I
You
know you're living down
dare.
in Florida, and I'm sorry, Lauren, but I just am not. There was nothing that I saw last year from Tua that excited me, and I understand it. He's got Jalen Waddle now. They went in and they brought Will Fuller, but this was one of the guys that had one of the lowest depths of target last year when going down the field, and then they bring in two guys who specialize in a deep ball. So I don't know if they're going to try to incorporate that into his game or what they're really doing there. I understand that he's got the playmakers, but there was just nothing that really wowed me last year with Tua. So right now, where he's ranked among the football guys analysts is QB 18, which means that realistically, you probably aren't even drafting him in a single QB standard league. But a lot of people are drafting Tua in the hopes that he can, be a part of a super flex lineup or something like that. And I've got him all the way down at 27. There's just so many guys out there that I think are better suited for streaming options and super or second quarterback options in super flex leagues. And Tua is a guy that I just really can't get behind this season.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. As heartbreaking at that, going to be for certain people. Not me. I really don't care because I agree with you. I'm kind of like Tua. I don't know. I'm kind of like a prove it to me first kind of a person, and he hasn't quite proven it to me yet. I'm going to give another name that's going to be pretty unpopular, which also stinks. And by the way, I don't love talking about bust candidates, just so you know. It sucks. I don't like being like, this guy's going to disappoint. That's sad, and I don't like to do that. But mine is Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson is one that I know it's spicy. And Russell Wilson is an awesome quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Real football, fabulous. When it comes to fantasy football, I'm concerned. Last year, we saw the wheels fall off in the second half of the season. And I don't think that that's necessarily going to change again this season, especially with Seattle so committed to the run as they've been just harping on over and over and over again. So Russell Wilson does concern me. I think he may bust, as we will say, which means, you draft him high, lots of draft capital early to get these quarterbacks that are not going to give you the kind of return on your draft investment, if you will. And right now, I think he's going around the 5th round. That's way too pricey for me. There are other, pieces that I would rather have than a quarterback that I'm not sold on. In fact, there are very few quarterbacks that I am going to take early, and Russell Wilson is absolutely one of them. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of 2 Point Stance. I am Lauren Carpenter, and I'm here with Dave Kluge. He's back. Be sure to subscribe to the Footballguys YouTube page. That's youtube.com, Footballguys TV. Don't forget that TV bit at the end. And just a reminder, we go live every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, and then you can go ahead and watch that replay on our YouTube channel at 7 p.m. Eastern. Dave, how are you? And welcome back to the show. I missed you.
Oh, I missed you too. I missed everything about this. I was talking to Joe Bryant when I was on the trip actually,
The
and
boss
my wife and
man.
I, yes, talking to the boss man. I had to check in. We had a breakdown in Lake City, Colorado. So in the midst of this camping, hiking road trip that I was on, we had 2 days where we got Wi-Fi. So of course I touched base with Joe at that point in time. And my wife and I, we do this trip every single year where we just like pack up the car for 2 weeks. Don't really have any plans, just go climb some mountains and live in a tent, sleep in the car, whatever we got to do for a couple of weeks. It's just our way to unplug. And I've done this for, we've done this for quite some time now, and it's always been a blast. This was the first year though, where I'm full-time in the football industry. And don't get me wrong, I had a blast, but it's a lot different taking a break from, like a passion, something that you love doing, than it is taking a break from a 9 to 5 that you're miserable at. So, very excited to be back. And this is my first show since I've been back. I want to rewind though and talk about this Russell Wilson thing though, because something that I noticed when I was just looking at the rankings real quickly. First of all, you already called out how he just fell apart the second half of last year.
Yep.
That's 2 straight years now, 2 years in a row
Very good
where
point.
he has just fallen off in the second half. But the other thing, when I'm looking at the rankings here on the Footballguys website, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and then Russell Wilson. The one that really jumps out to me is Russell Wilson, because at his age, he doesn't have that rushing upside that he did earlier on in his career. So when you're looking at a lot of these guys that are getting drafted before him, what I kind of consider the big 5, Mahomes, Allen, Murray, Jackson, and Prescott, All of those guys are going to have rushing upside that's really going to help you. And I think that at this stage in his career, Russell Wilson lacks that. And another guy that lacks that is right behind Russell Wilson in our rankings, Tom Brady. He's going into what? He's going to be 43 when this season starts, I believe. I think he rushed for 1 yard last year. And where I'm at playing fantasy, I want to get that guy that has the rushing upside. So I'd rather pass on Russell Wilson, pass on Tom Brady, pass on Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, and just give me Jalen Hurts as that 10th quarterback off the board instead of any of those other guys.
Surprise, surprise. Jalen Hurts, a favorite
Surprise.
of Dave Kluge. Surprise, surprise. All right.
Had
So,
to
and
plug
I
it in
do.
right off the bat.
I know, exactly. Let's just go ahead and just throw it out there. We'll probably talk about Cam Newton and Aaron Rodgers. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? You'll have to stick around and see. I don't think we will, actually. Maybe we will. I don't know. But okay, so we talked about our quarterback bust candidates. Let's go ahead and move on to our next position group. What about running backs? Are there any running backs that you feel could possibly be disappointing, like we had already mentioned with our quarterbacks? Who are they and why?
So this is probably even spicier than your Russell Wilson one.
Ooh.
And I hate saying this because Derrick Henry, the football player, is one of my favorite players to watch. Like, he's just a violent runner. You know that he's going to get fed the ball, but there are just so many red flags surrounding Derrick
I
Henry.
need a glass of water and like a fire extinguisher for this take. Hang on a minute. Wow. Okay, continue.
It's a tough one. And the thing is, like, if I'm sitting there at the end of the first round, early second round, and Derrick Henry's still available, of course I'm going to draft him. But we have seen a lot of, not even just a lot, pretty much every running back that has come off a 2,000-yard season not find success in that next year. As a matter of fact, not a single running back that hit 2,000 yards was able to eclipse even 1,500 yards the following season. Sticking on the topic of this 2,000-yard club that Derrick Henry just became a part of, only one guy that's ever hit that number was older than Derrick Henry, and that was Hall of Famer Barry Sanders was the only guy ever to do it at an older age. In addition to that, you've also got the 400 touch club. They lost Jonnu Smith in free agency. They lost Corey Davis in free agency, and those guys are both phenomenal run blockers. And I guess bringing in Julio helps with that a little bit. Julio might be even a better run blocker than Corey Davis, so you can kind of watch that. But the Jonnu Smith is a pretty big loss, and there's just so many red flags there that the age, the usage, all of that stuff is going to pile up. Over the last 2 years, if you include playoffs, Derrick Henry has over 800 touches over the last 2 years. There isn't a single other running back that has over 700. Dalvin Cook is at 695, I believe it is, over the last 2 years. So we know that he's going to get the ball a lot, but it's only a matter of time before those legs fall off and he just breaks down. This could be the year. It could be next year, but I'd much rather draft a younger guy than, have Derrick Henry use my first round pick and see what we've seen happen to Todd Gurley and Le'Veon Bell and these other guys that hit that, age and where they just kind of fall off. So I'm fading Derrick Henry just a little bit this year.
That is interesting. That is very interesting. I have heard the argument, that same one, like we don't want his, legs to give out. So I'm curious to see what happens to him this year because I'm kind of on the fence about it. He also really didn't get super heavily utilized his entire career, early on in his career, I should say. So I do kind of still give him that slight edge. And with the addition of Julio Jones, for me, that helps their run game out a little bit. And it's hard to ignore those touches, just like you said. But that is interesting and kind of a perspective I hadn't taken before. But go ahead.
I think he's got a good chance to lead the league in rushing again. But if I'm in a PPR league and I'm looking at the guys that are ranked directly behind him, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, I'd prefer all of those guys over Derrick Henry just because of the rushing upside that they're going to give you. Or I'm sorry, the pass catching upside that they're going to give you.
I knew what you meant. And that is also a good point. I love Austin Eckler very, very much. But mine, I've actually already talked about this player. It's Melvin Gordon. And this should not come as any huge surprise. And the argument that I'm going to have here that makes me kind of feel he's going to be a pretty significant bust candidate is because he has 1 year left on his contract, which is kind of, neither here nor there for me on the whole bust thing. But it's just important to remember only 1 more year. They just drafted a rookie running back that's going to come in right behind him. And Melvin Gordon may be facing a possible suspension still. So we don't know how long that's going to be. And I just feel like you are going to be sorely disappointed with his usage and the amount of games that he plays if he does miss time, obviously. And then that gives Javonte Williams enough time to really establish himself as a runner. And it may be hard to move back away from Javonte Williams. And there's another interesting caveat I want to throw in here when it comes to Melvin Gordon is that they were pretty committed to a running back by committee when Phillip Lindsay was there. So I'm curious to see how much that will or will not change moving forward. And there's really nothing nothing that stands out to me that says it is going to be moving away from a running back by committee. And I feel like his ADP is a little bit too expensive for me if I want to get a bell cow running back, which I don't think that he is going to be. I think he's going to share time, or he's going to miss time, or both. So Melvin Gordon,
and
no thank you.
Javonte Williams, he's been getting just ringing endorsements from the entire coaching staff so far in Denver. Michael Florio recently, I can't remember who it was, but he had a Denver beat reporter on his show who said that he expects Javonte Williams to be the week 1 starter. So you're starting to see that happen right now, where it was Melvin Gordon getting drafted here, Javonte Williams getting drafted here. Now it's slowly starting to come together. But by the time we hit August and it's redraft season, it wouldn't shock me if Javonte Williams is going off the board before Melvin Gordon.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Now, something, since we're talking about this right now, the Footballguys staff is actually putting together a collaborative article right now that is all about overvalued running backs. So be sure to check that out, because I'm hitting on 3 in that article, and one of them isn't even Derrick Henry, because I feel like I have beaten that horse to death already, talking about why I'm fading Derrick Henry. So in this article we got coming out, I touch on Cam Akers, Raheem Mostert, and J.D. McKissick as 3 guys that I think are all going to be a little bit overvalued right now.
That is, first of all, professional plug right there. Well done. Also, do as he says, read the article. There are so many fantastic voices that we have in these collaborative articles, and there's information in there that you really don't want to miss out on. Check it out. Make sure you do. And also, we're going to make sure we move on to our next position group, which are the wide receivers. Now, wide receivers are normally a very deep class, but that still means, well, still doesn't mean, I guess I should say, that there won't be bust potential here. Dave, who have you got as a wide receiver bust that you are fading, maybe want to stay away from this year?
So CeeDee Lamb, I love the
Ouch!
I think that he is
wow, you
such a
are
good
full
player.
of, you are, do I need to like send you a glass of milk or some like baking soda?
I got some cold water right here. I got some cold water.
House it. Just take a bath in it.
So CeeDee Lamb, I love the talent, but I still think that Amari is the number 1 guy. And right now, CeeDee Lamb is getting drafted just a few spots behind Amari Cooper. And like we talked about with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon closing up that gap and Javonte Williams passing him, it wouldn't surprise me if CeeDee Lamb ends up passing up Amari Cooper. Right now, when you look at the Footballguys rankings, Amari Cooper is 13th, CeeDee Lamb is 14th. And I love the Dallas offense for fantasy. You know, they don't have a great defense. Dak Prescott loves to throw the ball, but, and I hate using this term. We need to find a better term than too many mouths to feed. But the Dallas Cowboys offense is the definition of too many mouths to feed. So while I'm talking, you try to think of something else, a different colloquialism that we can use besides too many mouths to feed. But I truly think that there are. Amari Cooper is a phenomenal, always underrated wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb has so much talent, but you've still got Michael Gallup there. You've still got Blake Jarwin. Last year, we saw Ezekiel Elliott setting a career pace for targets and receptions out of the backfield before Dak Prescott got injured. So I think he's going to be involved in the pass game a little bit. And I just don't know if with Michael Gallup, Blake Jarwin, and Ezekiel Elliott there, if there are going to be 2 guys that are going to be able to be low-end wide receiver ones, like they're both being valued right now. And if I have to pick between one of the 2, Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb, I'm leaning towards Amari Cooper, which just means that CeeDee Lamb is unfortunately most likely to bust.
You know, I really just tried to like Google search real quick another phrase for too many mouths to feed. Nothing really popped up very quickly, so I do not have the ability to overwhelm our viewers and listeners right now, except to say maybe
the same thing. Too many.
The targets are spread too. Yeah, but that's like almost too many decision makers. I feel like too many cooks in the kitchen. Maybe targets are spread too thin. There is a line from the Lord of the Rings. It's like he feels like butter being spread too thin over toast or something along those lines. That just means I'm tired, which I frequently am because I'm very busy.
Yesterday on Twitter, Jason Wood he said that we need to stop using the term truther. And then it just kind of turned into this whole thread of like overused fantasy terms, Konami code and truther and too many mouths to feed. And there's a lot of them. We really need to start expanding our vocabulary a little bit in this industry, don't we?
I do. This is going to be now a goal of mine, is to try to think of new phrases. And if you guys have new phrases, hit me up. Stepmom Lauren, hit up Dave at Dave Kluge. I want to know them because I need to like incorporate this into my vernacular. Okay. My wide receiver is someone. I know it's someone that I don't really, I'm trying to avoid it. Do you like how I'm really procrastinating getting to my wide receiver, which I know is going to make certain people very happy when they watch and listen this episode. But you know what? I'm doing it anyway. It's going to be DJ Chark. And I hate this because I love DJ Chark to death, not only just as a person, he's a great football player. I love him in fantasy, but I don't know what's going to happen with that new regime they have going on in Jacksonville. And the biggest threat, I think, to DJ Chark is Marvin Jones. I don't like that either. There's a lot of stuff going on right now that really worry me. So I may have to pass up on DJ Chark, which I don't like, especially in Dynasty because I have DJ Chark like everywhere. And that bothers me. No, I don't like it. Just even saying it makes me sound not happy.
Let me throw a quick piece of trivia at you, Lauren. There's one wide receiver in the NFL who has caught 9 or more touchdowns in consecutive seasons. Who do you think it is?
DJ Chark. Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones.
Marvin
Jones. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So many people are writing him off for whatever
you can get
reason.
Marvin Jones so late.
I know. He's caught 9 or more touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 seasons. And I get it. He's 31 years old. But I think that a lot of people are writing him off. And it's tough. I mean, the backfield is a mess over there. The tight end situation with Tebow and Eifert and O'Shaughnessy and all them.
And Travis Etienne catching passes now and being, widely acclaimed as this pass catcher. It's like, speaking of too many mouths to feed.
Yes. Yeah. Jacksonville is a frustrating one to project. We're going to talk about that a little bit later because, there's all sorts of new reports coming out of Jacksonville right now.
Yeah, there's all sorts of new reports coming out of everywhere, but Jacksonville, I feel, is the one that people are really zeroing in on because of Trevor Lawrence, Tim Tebow, Travis Etienne, Urban Meyer. There's so many things going on here. But yeah, so moving on, last position group we have for our bust candidates for this year is the tight end position, which I feel is kind of low-hanging fruit because almost every tight end will bust if you draft them early, in my opinion, except for the elite like Travis Kelce and George Kittle, minus injury, of course. But Dave, who you got for your tight end you want to fade?
Oh man, I'm fading any tight end that isn't named Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, and George Kittle. I mean, I'm seriously, like, I've done so many best ball drafts where I'm not kidding. If I don't get one of those 3 guys in the first 2 rounds, I will wait until the final 2 rounds, 17th and 18th round. Give me Irv Smith and Cole Kmet. Give me whoever it is that's still around in the 17th and 18th round. And I'm happy with those guys because there's just, we fall for this trap every year of reaching for those middle round tight ends that do not pay off. And one of the guys for me this year, and I've talked about this guy in previous shows, but Kyle Pitts. And he's just not a guy that I'm buying into at all. Historically, we have never seen rookie tight ends produce. I think I've dropped this stat on the show before. You got to go back to 1961. Mike Ditka was the last rookie tight end catch for 900 or more yards. I mean, it's crazy that people are buying into this hype yet again. We've seen it with Hawkinson. We've seen it with Ingram. We've seen it with David Njoku. We've seen it with Hayden Hurst. All of these guys that come in and everyone says, this is going to be the rookie tight end that is going to change the landscape for rookie tight ends. And what do they do consistently? They faceplant every single time. And sure, Kyle Pitts could be the guy, but I'm not falling for this trap again. So sure, you can talk about the vacated targets. You can talk about his college production. You can talk about the fact that he plays out of the slot. I get it, but I am not going to be willing to spend a 5th or 6th round draft pick on Kyle Pitts when you could still get, very good receivers. You can still get Josh Jacobs at the same time that Kyle Pitts is getting drafted. So relative to ADP, I think that Kyle Pitts is arguably the most likely to bust.
And I agree with you there. And I'm very glad you brought up relative to ADP because I don't want that to get lost in translation as we're talking about these guys that we are fading. And I personally don't have a do not draft list except for one player I have on there. So hit me up if you want to know who that is and why. But it is all relative to ADP. It's if Kyle Pitts falls, yeah, I'm going to take him. You know what I mean? But I'm not willing to risk that shot at getting a wide receiver 2 or possibly a high upside RB2 at a position that I can definitely get for production later on in the draft. So that is really what we mean by these bust candidates. It's not that they're guaranteed to fail. That is not what I mean. I don't know what Dave means because he's real negative and sometimes he can say that kind of stuff. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, so it's not like they're guaranteed to fail, but it's where your expectations are based on their draft position and what you are giving up to draft that person. Is that going to disappoint you? Are you going to be happy with it? So that's kind of what we mean by the bust candidates, which I never like talking about because I don't like to talk about disappointing things at all. But before we get into stuff that is way more fun, like training camp news and all this other stuff, Dave wants to go. So you go. Go, Dave.
Well, the toughest thing about these bus shows too is that we're sitting here trying to
Sad.
go really against the grain. So
I know.
these are the shows that come back to haunt us at the end of the season
Oh,
when Derrick Henry rushes for 1,600 yards and everyone goes, "Oh, you idiot, you faded Derrick Henry," or when
I
CeeDee Lamb outperforms Amari Cooper. We're sitting here trying to say the consensus that we don't agree with. So it's a very tough position to put us in. Way to pick this topic this week, Lauren.
I know that was me. That was all me. My bad. And also, I totally skipped over my tight end fade. I just threw you under the bus and was like, "Hey,
You
you
sure
just go
did.
ahead and tell yours." I forgot to give you mine. My bad. It's Mark Andrews. Do you know how badly this hurts my soul to say this? Because I love Mark Andrews, but there is, actually, and Dave, you brought up several things about, Rashad Bateman being in here and the fact that they just don't pass. They've combined for like under 400 passing passes, I guess, pass attempts. I don't know if it's completions or attempts in the last 2 years. The Ravens have, I should say. So it's not awesome. So is he going to continue to be the red zone monster that made him so profitable? Or is the now pass catching J.K. Dobbins going to be the guy? Is it going to be Lamar Jackson running it in? Or is it going to be Rashad Bateman? Is it going to be Marquise Hollywood Brown? I don't really know. And his ADP is pretty high. I think it's fourth or fifth round. It's still very high. So that is frustrating when you don't really have the kind of ability to predict what is going to happen with Mark Andrews like I think we've had in the past. So that's disappointing. Are we? Go ahead.
When we're looking at the Football Guys rankings, those guys are side by side. Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts are right next to each other.
Yes.
And I think
perfect.
that I think you and I just have the same kind of mindset here that why would you draft a tight end in that position when there's still so many guys that have wide receiver 1 potential, running back 2 potential? Like there's still a lot of good players up there that are going to get you 15 or 16 points a week. So why would you draft the tight end that is going to have some weeks where he's going to put up 3 or 4 points?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you there. And that all goes back to being relative to ADP. So can we not talk about things that are sad, like bust candidates and people that we really like and talking about how poor they are? But before we get into the news, which Dave has some really funny story that I can't wait for him to share, which he informed me today, which I'm excited about. But if you guys are watching the show, if you guys like rankings and ADP and all those things that we're talking about right now, that means you are serious about fantasy football. And if you are serious about fantasy football, you understand that fantasy football is challenging and it takes time. You need a Footballguys premium subscription that gives you the edge and it helps you make winning decisions in less time. That's very important to stress. Winning decisions in less time. We're all busy. We all have jobs. We all have things we have to do. Just go to Footballguys. There should be maybe at the top. I don't know. We just got rid of our early bird discount pricing. So if you missed out on that, don't worry. You can still join. Go to footballguys.com. I believe it's at the top. It says join now. I don't know. Somewhere in there. We'll put a link in it when we tweet this show out later and when we talk about it on our YouTube channel. But we do all the work. You do all the winning. And now we're finally done with sad bust candidates. That makes me very, very happy. So let's dive right into the news. Dave, I am going to just go ahead and cede the floor to you. And I want you to talk to me about what is going on in LA with the Rams between Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, because I want to hear this.
Well, I just got really excited when I see this. I try not to be a victim to coach speak, especially when it's coming in June. But I felt like the one thing that was holding the Rams back for years and years and years was Goff's inability to find open receivers, push the ball down the field, whatever it may be. And now it seems like there is just a cataclysmic change going from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford, and people seem to be ignoring this. But Sean McVay came out yesterday, and he said, when talking about Matthew Stafford, he goes, "Bro, that dude is a bad I'm not going to say it on air. Sorry, Joe." But that gets me excited because I think, we've seen this team where they have these phenomenal pass catchers in Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee and all of these great pass catchers. But for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, because they were limited by Jared Goff, they just had to run the ball. Now they bring in Matthew Stafford, who has one of the most accurate deep balls in NFL history. And in addition to bringing in Matthew Stafford, they signed Deshaun Jackson and they drafted Tutu Atwell, who are both downfield threats. So I think that we are going to see a huge shift in the way that the Rams operate on offense this year. It's a story that gets me really, really excited. And again, it's tough not to fall victim to coach speak this time of year. But when you hear this bright coach like Sean McVay coming out with these ringing endorsements about Matthew Stafford, The one thing that's been holding Matthew Stafford back this whole time has been, frankly, the Lions organization and not having any good coaching or anything like that. So now you get, Matthew Stafford, who is a guy who has never had a good coach, paired up with Sean McVay, a great coach who's never had a good quarterback. So I just love that duo. Love that they're meshing early on in the offseason. And I can't wait to see what comes out of the Rams this year. I mean, does that move the needle for you at all as far as Matthew Stafford?
It's kind of what I expected, to be honest. I'm just happy that it's true. I expected Matthew Stafford to come into this organization and just blow the top off the whole place and be like, yeah, okay, now you have a stud. Because I love Matthew Stafford. My husband is a Lions fan. I, by proxy, am a Lions fan. I am happy to see Matthew Stafford in a new home where he can just excel and do what he needs to do and be a winner, which I think is awesome. So it is really great to hear that they are as excited as I think we are as fans and as fantasy football players to really see where this potential can go, because he is surrounded by so many amazing weapons. And one of those weapons is the coaching staff. That weapon is going to allow him to unleash and not make dumb decisions, which I feel the Detroit Lions organization may have done several times, but that's for another time. So yeah, I'm just a few. But I'm really excited to see what Matthew Stafford does. I'm excited for real football and I'm excited for fantasy. And just, what would be really awful is if, Sean McVay was like, yeah, he's good. So I'm really glad that he was like, yeah, he's a bad, what? And that makes me excited. Because, I like being excited when it's the end of June approaching July and we're getting ready for 2021, because that's how I roll. I enjoy high energy. But let's go ahead and stay with LA with the Rams. And we're going to go to the tight end position, which we just finished up on our bust candidates. But let's see, Jacob Harris. I want to make sure I got that name right because I didn't know who this was. Full disclosure, my bad. So rookie tight end Jacob Harris has drawn some pretty serious hype because Tyler Higbee isn't practicing. And they really love him. He's getting a lot of attention and he's getting a lot of, I don't want to say hype again. What's another word for hype? Attention, hype, spotlight. Let's put it that way. So what do you think? Is that someone that we should be paying attention to? Should we just kind of ignore this? I don't know. I didn't even know who the guy was. So
I just told you that I'm fading one of the biggest, hottest prospects in NFL history coming into the draft, getting picked by the Falcons 4th overall. So no, if I'm fading the 4th overall tight end, or I'm sorry, the 4th overall pick, who is a tight end because of the past production that we've seen from rookie tight ends, no, I'm not buying into a 5th round tight end. Again, and Jacob Harris, full disclosure, I had to look up who he was too. I saw the story and I was like, who is Jacob Harris? So it's not just you.
Who is this guy?
I mean, the guy's got solid measurables, whatever, but no, sure. I'm not getting excited about this. I mean, that stat about no rookie tight end having eclipsed 900 yards since 1961, it's one of my favorite stats to drop. I mean, it is just mind-boggling. So no, even if, Tyler Higbee gets cut and Jacob Harris is the only tight end standing on that roster, no, I'm not going to be getting excited about Jacob Harris this year.
Yeah, I have solid measurables because I love fried chicken, but probably a different type of solid measurable you were talking about. But one last tight end let's bring up, because this has kind of been circulating around the social media sphere, as it were. Travis Kelce has come out and really praised Noah Gray, who is with the Chiefs. For me, I feel like this is going to be in the same kind of category. No, I'm not excited about Noah Gray, but this does kind of give me a peek possibly at maybe Dynasty. I don't really know, but for me, I'm not really paying too much attention to this. What do you think? Am I totally out in left field here?
Lauren, how many times are we going to talk about rookie tight ends on this show?
I'm just literally making sure. I know. I'm checking that box that says I covered news that was on there. So, and just making sure.
No,
let's talk more about rookie tight ends.
Travis Kelce,
Kyle Pitts.
148 targets last year. He led tight ends in targets. That's not going to change. I'm happy that Travis Kelce wants to take on this mentorship role and build up some confidence in the rookie. But do we really expect a 5th round rookie to come in and cut into Travis Kelce's workload? Absolutely not. So sure, if you want to stash him, but I think Travis Kelce still has another 3 or 4 years in the tank. We've seen a lot of tight ends. I mean, even now, guys like Jimmy Graham are still producing. Jared Cook's still producing. For whatever reason, tight ends have a pretty lengthy shelf life when it comes to NFL careers. We saw Tony Gonzalez, still performing well into his 30s. So, yeah, if you want to snag him in Dynasty and sit on him for 5 or 6 years, go for it. But no, I don't think the Noah Gray is somebody that you should be getting too excited about.
there's that one person that's like, oh, I got this news on Noah Gray. Don't be that person. Don't be that person. Listen to us. Ignore this. Really not a big deal.
Somebody's going to drop a Twitter thread about Noah Gray, and it's going to be no substance whatsoever. It's going to say, this is where he went to school. This is how tall he is. This is how much he weighs. And it's going to get
measurables.
And it's going to get 500 likes, and then Noah Gray is going to be trending on Sleeper next week. That's the way that this works.
Yeah, for real. All right, so moving on from rookie tight ends, you're welcome, everyone, world, because we're done with that. Boo, move on. Now on to my team, the New Orleans Saints. And we have talked, at least I have talked pretty extensively, about how they need a solid wide receiver too in this offense that's not Alvin Kamara, their running back, right? Because they need somebody that's going to complement Michael Thomas. They no longer have Drew Brees, so there's going to be some help or needed help for whichever quarterback takes over, whether it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill, whatever. So I found this very interesting that came out of Saints camp, and it was that wide receiver Tre'Quan Smith said that he himself recognizes that this could be the year that he breaks out in New Orleans. He recognizes that there is the potential for him to take the step forward, and he wants to do so. And I think that is pretty awesome. And it makes me a little bit more excited about keeping my eye on Tre'Quan Smith in the draft. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I've been targeting Tre'Quan Smith in so many of my drafts this offseason. He was just an absolute.
So even before this news came out, you were like ready.
Even before this news, I have not been able to quit Tre'Quan Smith since he got drafted.
He's hard to quit, right? He's so fast.
He is, and it's like we know this is going to be a pass-heavy offense, and we know that Michael Thomas is going to be the number one guy, but like we've just been waiting for that number two option to step up. It was Emmanuel Sanders, and like nobody has really been that exciting, and we see these flashes from Tre'Quan Smith that just get you so excited. As a rookie, he had 2 100-yard games. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. And somebody needs to be the number two guy there. And I think it's going to be Tre'Quan Smith. But even with this quote, I just wish that he had like a little more, just like bravado and oomph in that. It was, him saying like, oh yeah, this could be my year and maybe I'll break out. I
feel like he's a very mellow dude. You know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like he's super mellow anyway.
I want him to be like, this is my year. I'm grabbing it by the horns and I'm going to be the guy this year. But he's like, oh yeah, I might be able to be the number two guy behind Michael Thomas. Like, just have a little more confidence in yourself. Come on,
it's fair.
Nice. Yeah.
Fire. We need fire takes. Fire takes from Tre'Quan Smith. He's listening to the show, obviously. So we are going to give him that pep talk that he needs, Dave, in order to be like, believe in yourself, Tre'Quan, because if we believe, you believe. And that means you can do it. All right. So speaking of wide receivers, let's go ahead and stick there. So John Gruden actually came out, John Gruden of the Raiders, just in case anyone doesn't know, he came out and said that Henry Ruggs looks much better now. I have no idea what to make of this. I don't necessarily know or think I care. Should I care? Because I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Okay, I should. I don't know why. Convince me.
Yeah. You can't teach speed. And Henry Ruggs ran a 4.27. That is mind-numbingly fast. And we've seen a lot of really fast guys flame out quickly in the NFL. We've seen it with Jacoby Ford. We've seen it with Darius Hayward-Bay. We've seen these guys that are just like eye-popping when they run their 40, and then it doesn't translate into an NFL career. And sure, that could certainly be the career arc that we're going to see from Henry Ruggs. But he's still so young that I'm willing to buy in again. Last year, Darren Waller was, for all intents and purposes, their number one wide receiver. He played tight end, but he took snaps out of the slot. He led the team in targets, and somebody's going to need to step up there. The only other person that they've added in free agency after losing Nelson Aguilar was John Brown, and that's not somebody that I think is going to step up and be the number one guy. It's funny, actually, when I look at this depth chart, there's a lot of guys that I like on the team. I really like Zay Jones, but I don't think that Zay Jones is going to step up and be the team's number one wide receiver. So I think the stage is kind of set for Henry Ruggs to do that. And, he was the fastest guy in the combine last year, like I already mentioned. The one thing I worry about is Derek Carr's inability to throw the ball when he's under pressure. And this offensive line, they went out and they got Alex Leatherwood in the draft, which is great. Richie Incognito, he's getting old, but he should be back. So I'm hoping that this offensive line could be a little bit more like what we'd expect from a John Gruden offense and not as shaky as it was last year. They just got hammered with injuries last year, and then they just did this whole flip of their entire offensive line. I'm hoping that they're able to build something, because when Derek Carr gets under pressure, he's not a good quarterback. And, I think that if he gets the time in the pocket, he can hit Ruggs on those deep throws. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding the Raiders this year. But yeah, I'm willing to buy in on Henry Ruggs. Somebody needs to step up in that wide receiver room.
Yeah, that's very true, and I see your point there. And while you were speaking, I also looked up his ADP. I think it's like as late as the 15th round in PPR. So that's actually not bad, as long as you understand the kind of player that Henry Ruggs will potentially be. Because Hunter Renfrow is the guy in the slot, Henry Ruggs is not. So he's going to be that deep downfield threat. He's the one that is going to be kind of a Mike Williams type character, where he can give you a huge week because Derek Carr is going to, bomb it down the field and he might get lucky kind of thing, because he's fast and can create separation because of his speed. But the other thing that also does worry me is the addition of Kenyon Drake, and he's a pass catching running back. Mm-hmm. So Hunter Renfrow, pass catching running back, and Kenyon Drake. Josh Jacobs still catches some passes as well. And then there's Darren Waller. So where exactly does he fit in? But since he's going so late, yeah, that might be something that I'm willing to take a shot on. But then I foresee myself having no idea when I'm going to start him, and then starting him on the days he sucks, and then benching him on the week he blows up. That's like me and Amari Cooper have that relationship, which is why we broke up and we haven't got back together. But that's a personal story that y'all don't need to know about. So, just thought I'd let you know. But yeah, I guess you got me to care. Congratulations.
Yeah, like I said, you can't teach speed. And I was a sucker for the guys that I mentioned earlier. The reason I mentioned them is because they were guys that it took me 3 years to kind of move off of in fantasy football. I kept drafting Jacoby Ford. I kept drafting Darius Hayward-Bay. And that could be me with Ruggs. I could keep drafting him for the next 3 years before I finally move off. But he's a second-year guy. I'm still willing to give him a shot.
There you go. I like it. You can't quit him either. Sometimes we form those relationships too. It's, kind of is what it is. But you're right. It is still young in his career. He hasn't totally proven that he can't get it done. If anything, this is a Derek Carr situation as well. But also the offense needs to take a step forward too. And because he's going so late, I don't mind that at all. All right, let's go back to what we were talking about with the Jaguars. So we're just going to leapfrog around this whole entire show sheet. Sorry about that. But we're going to go back to Travis Etienne, and he is making a big splash as a pass catcher. We had mentioned that he was working out, taking snaps, I guess I should say, with the wide receiving core, and that's really been making quite an impact. So what does this do? What does this change? Because for me, this means they're getting pretty serious about him having a pretty heavy pass catching role here, and I like it. I really like it. So what do you think, Dave? What's your takeaway on this?
I really like it as well. And, shockingly, in Sports Illustrated, John Shipley just came out and said that he expects James Robinson to be the week 1 starter for the running backs there, which is pretty shocking. I think that this can be a pretty frustrating backfield. And we've seen in the past, we've seen the Saints, we've seen the Browns, we've seen the Chargers. We've seen these teams that were good enough to support multiple running backs. But I don't know if we're going to have that same offensive firepower from Jacksonville. So I think it's going to be one or the other. And I don't really know what to expect. But if I had to guess, and this really pains me to say, I'm starting to think that Travis Etienne, rather than hurting James Robinson's value, could be hurting Laviska Shenault's value. They're both very similar players where they're gadgety guys that can, take passes out of the backfield. They can take handoffs. They can go down the field a little bit. They can just do so much. They've got this developed route tree. And so I'm starting to worry that Etienne could end up cutting into Laviska Shenault a little bit more than he can cut into James Robinson. So there's a possibility that, if the beat reporter is coming out and saying that James Robinson is going to be the week 1 starter, it could be similar to, like we were just talking about with the Raiders, kind of a Josh Jacobs, Kenyon Drake type scenario where James Robinson's getting the early down work, and then, Travis Etienne, Kenyon Drake, they come in on 3rd down and on passing downs, and when they're playing catch up late in the game, which is going to be really frustrating for fantasy managers because we're going to see some boom games from James Robinson when Jacksonville's winning and they're running out the clock and they're getting these goal line carries, and James Robinson can have 25, 30-point weeks, which is going to be great. And then we're going to see other games where they can fall behind early. James Robinson just gets pushed to the bench at halftime, and then it's the Travis Etienne show. He racks up a dozen catches and has a great fantasy week. So I think it's going to be very, very tough to predict. But yeah, Jacksonville, another team with, dare I say it, too many mouths to feed.
Oh man, that's going to be our bingo card, like our buzzword. I love it, but it's appropriate. It is actually going to be difficult. Now, I'm hoping out of this situation that there's going to be pretty solid identities. And the reason why I'm a little bit more excited about Travis Etienne than I am about James Robinson is it's because of the chemistry that he already has with Trevor Lawrence. I almost said Taylor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, excuse me. So yeah, Yeah, and I like that, especially because a majority of my leagues are in PPR anyway. So it worries me for James Robinson, but it's very exciting for me for Travis Etienne, also for Trevor Lawrence. So it's, it should be good. But speaking of running backs, let's go ahead and go into Green Bay. No, we're not talking about Aaron Rodgers. We're talking about AJ Dillon. So Matt LaFleur has commented, he's the head coach. He has commented on AJ Dillon's receiving ability. So we're going to bring this full circle, pass catching running backs, going back to Green Bay from Aaron Rodgers. Somehow that connects. Just go with me. It's there in my brain. Just go with me on that one. Are we buying that AJ Dillon can be a pass catcher despite his ginormous legs and his size? Is that something that's going to happen? And with Aaron Jones there, they just got this big contract.
Oh man, I really hope not. I thought that we had a pretty clear picture here that it was going to be, Aaron Jones taking the majority of the work.
Why more confusing? We have enough of this.
I know.
Have an identity.
Aaron Jones is one of the best pass catching backs in the NFL. So let him do what he does. Bring AJ Dillon in on the short yardage situation. And the thing is, I even would always say that AJ Dillon was going to be the goal line back, but Aaron Jones was one of the most effective goal line backs in the NFL. I mean, he just has that nose for the end zone, and he's got an ability to get in there. He's got that slipperiness that you just can't really teach. So I hate this because I've been so high on Aaron Jones. I have Aaron Jones ranked as my RB4 in PPR rankings, which is substantially higher than the consensus. But we've seen it. He's had 2 straight years now where he's finished as a top 5 running back. Now Jamal Williams is out of the picture, and I thought that was going to open up the floodgates for Aaron Jones to take 100% of the receiving work. If they're starting to work AJ Dillon into the receiving game, it certainly hurts Aaron Jones's value. But like I said, I try not to be a victim to coach speak at this time of the year, and I'm hoping that that's exactly what this is. You already have Aaron Jones as one of the best pass catching backs in the NFL. Just let him do what he does, and let AJ Dillon do what he does. And I'm really hoping that they're not going to start bringing AJ Dillon in on third down and passing downs.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. 100%. All right. Calvin Ridley underwent minor cleanup surgery. Concerned?
No, not at all. Not one bit. I mean, that's today's NFL. You hear this all the time. I feel like prior to 5 or 8 years ago, I'd never heard the term cleanup surgery. And now you hear it all the time. It seems like players are just constantly going in for these cleanup surgeries where they're just, cutting out some extra cartilage, whatever it may be. And I've never seen a case that has serious complications from one of these injuries, one of these cleanup surgeries, if you will. So it's not something that I'm really worried about too much. Calvin Ridley is going to feast with Julio Jones out of there. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, right after the Julio Jones trade, but Calvin Ridley saw so much more volume, more yardage, more yards per catch. Did just about everything better except catch touchdowns last year when Julio Jones didn't play. So Calvin Ridley, he's up there where, he's in that top tier of receivers for me now. He is going to feast. If anybody in your league is freaking out over this cleanup surgery, congrats. Hopefully he'll drop you and you can get him in your league because he has potential to be the wide receiver one this year. So don't stress about this.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I 100% agree. Let's close out our news and reaction and discussion with your Bears. So Bears have come out and said that they believe, or they may try to get David Montgomery even more work and more production for 2021. How excited are you? And do you believe it?
Well, they say this every year. I mean, ever since they drafted David Montgomery, they're treating this guy like he's this is my second Barry Sanders reference on this show, but they treat this guy like Barry Sanders. They think that they have just the best running back in the NFL. And no disrespect meant to David Montgomery, but he's good. He's maybe slightly above average, but I don't think that he's in that tier that the Bears seem to think that he is. And we've talked about this on the show many times. If you listen to any fantasy football podcast, you have heard this many times. David Montgomery's season was heavily inflated by having no competition and a cake schedule down the stretch last year. So if you're drafting him, expecting him to be an RB1 again, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But the good news is he's dropping into the late 3rd, early 4th round of drafts right now, which I think is actually a really, really good value. So Tariq Cohen's back and he's going to be heavily involved. Damian Williams, he wasn't brought in for fun. Damian Williams is still going to be there to spell some carries from David Montgomery as well. So I think that them paying Tariq Cohen $15 million, them going out and signing Damian Williams shows that there is going to be somewhat of a committee there. But this is just the Bears doing Bears things, go out and every sign in the world shows that they're going to be running out a committee and then say, nope, David Montgomery is our guy. I mean, I think it's just not something that you want to read into too deeply. I think that you'll probably see Montgomery handle about 50 to 60% of the Bears carries next year. If you're hoping for more than that, you're going to be disappointed. But that being said, I think that David Montgomery's ADP is actually fairly good right now, and I think that he's a pretty solid buy where you can get him.
Yeah, I agree. I really like him at his ADP right now. But what really annoys me is this kind of news and this kind of hype that will inflate his ADP to where it does not need to be. So that's why this really irritates me, because it's like, stop it, just stop it. And no, we don't need any of that. Where he is right now is perfect, because this is where we can have a much better understanding of what it is that we're going to be getting in return from where we are drafting him, kind of like what we were discussing all in our own bust segment category, which wraps up our basic news and show topics and all of that for this episode. But before we end up finishing up the show, we're going to do what we do every week, which is highlight somebody on our Football Guys spotlight. David, is your turn, my friend. Take it away.
All right. I've got it down at the bottom right there.
How fancy!
_monk. Yeah, I did a little.
Why didn't we do this before?
I don't know. I just thought of it a couple seconds ago.
This is genius. You're a genius, Dave.
Thank you. You can see it down at the bottom at FFA _MENG. This is one of the guys, the first show that I was ever on. My first live show ever was with him and a few other guys from the Smash Accept podcast group. And he is just an awesome guy, brilliant mind. He works over at Fantrax, and he is their lead analyst over there. Fantrax and Football Guys, we've been doing a lot together recently, so I want to give them a little shout out as well. But Mung is just an amazing analyst, and we kind of joke around all the time that we just have identical takes. Like, even when I throw out my spiciest take imaginable, that I've got this guy ranked above this guy, almost like clockwork, Mung will screenshot his rankings and he has the same exact one. He wrote an article the other day about Derrick Henry being his RB10 and was getting all sorts of, tough love from Twitter about it. And
tough
sure enough,
love. That's a nice way to put it.
And that is exactly where I have Derrick Henry ranked. So he's a guy that just, sees the game the same way that I do. We have a very similar process, similar takes, and he is definitely worth a follow. FFA _Mung, MENG.
Awesome. I don't think I follow him, and I'm going to remedy that as soon as this is over. So thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to another episode of the Football Guys almost newest show, 2 Point Stance. I am Lauren Carpenter. You can find me at Stepmom Lauren, and I've got my good friend back with me, Dave Kluge. You can find him at Dave Kluge, and make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/footballguystv, so that you don't miss out on all of the amazing shows that we have on there, because it's not just our amazing show, which I think ours is the most amazingness of all amazingnesses of the shows. But we have other ones. We've got the Audible. We've got the Mailbag Show. We have got the Dynasty Show. We've got the Dynasty Newsletter Show. There is the Power Grid, and there's even more to come. Dave, take us home. Anything else you want to add besides getting super excited for football? Because I felt I just had to throw that in there. Take us home.
Something we never do on this show, and I feel like I should plug it, because tomorrow evening is when I do the Mailbag Show with Troy King. So if there's anything that we didn't get to today, either DM me on Twitter at Dave Kluge, or you can send it to mailbag@footballguys.com. Send your questions, and we will get to those tomorrow on the Mailbag Show.
Absolutely.
If you're
That's
unable
a great
to send
idea.
it, just tune in, and you can drop it live in the chat, and we answer questions live as well. So tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, be sure to check out the Mailbag Show with Troy King and myself.
I love it. We should definitely plug that every single time, because that's perfect. We'll be able to answer questions for you guys that we were not able to answer on this show. So make sure you guys check it out. And next week we are going to be back, and we're going to have a great time. I don't know what we're talking about. Do you know what we're talking about, Dave? I don't. We'll
figure it out. We'll figure it out. We already did the overvalued guys. We did the undervalued guys. We did the bust. We did the guys that are going to have bounce back seasons. There's always more to talk about.
There's always more to talk about. I know, and we're heading into July, so this is going to be pretty fun. All right, guys, remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Come check us out next Tuesday. Thank you again for joining us. See you next time. It's not working.